Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to take a look at something called biodiversity. So let's go ahead and break down the word first. So when we look at the word biodiversity, the first part means bio as in living, and the second part is diversity, so differences. So with biodiversity we're looking at living differences, and we could define biodiversity as the sum total of different organisms in the biosphere as a whole, so all the living parts of the earth, or we could look at biodiversity in specific areas. Basically you count up all the individual things that live in an area, and that will tell you the biodiversity. Now when you think of biodiversity, you could think of the different biomes and think about how much life actually exists in those biomes. So for example, in the desert, there's not very many living things, whether you're talking about plants or animals. So basically deserts have very little biodiversity. But if you're talking about a rainforest though, rainforests have lots of biodiversity. If you were to count up all the different species of plants and animals that live there, it'd be way more than a desert. So biodiversity is basically counting up all the living things in an area, or we could actually look at all of biodiversity on our planet. So biodiversity is considered one of our greatest natural resources. And the reason it's considered that is because everything we use around us is usually either from a plant or animal, or it's a derivative of a plant or animal. So if you think about all the foods we eat, they're plant or animal products. Many of the medicines that we use are plant or animal products or derivatives from plant or animals. And then all the industrial products, your clothes that you wear, the buildings, the homes that we live in, the school, they're made out of either plant or animal products. So just about everything we use is plant or animal products. So the more biodiversity we have on our planet, the more useful it is for us. We get a lot of benefit out of having great biodiversity on our planet. So if we take a look at this picture here, if we counted all the different organisms here in this area, that would give us the biodiversity for this area here. Alright, so quick little example. If we look at these two areas, area 1 and area 2, which one has greater biodiversity? Now it's not a trick, this is how easy biodiversity is. So here we have zebras, elephants, grass, trees, lions, hyenas, giraffes, gazelles, cheetahs, hippos, rhinos. In area 2 we have trees, grass, lions, elephants, deer, antelope, cheetahs, crocodiles, giraffes. To find out which area has greater biodiversity, all you have to do is count the individual types of species we have here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different types of species in area 1. And this side in area 2 we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in this case, area 1, let me go ahead and do this here. Area 1 here has greater biodiversity because it has more organisms than area 2 does. Alright, so even though biodiversity is one of our greatest natural resources, we don't always make the best decisions as human beings when it comes to protecting biodiversity, the number and amount of living things on our planet. So there's three main things that humans do to threaten biodiversity. The first is causing animals to go extinct. There's many things that human beings can do, such as destroying habitats, hunting, that cause animals to go extinct. Now, extinction is when the very last individual of a species dies. So the very, very last one dies and that species is gone forever. Then there's endangered. Endangered means that a species is almost extinct. So there's a difference. Extinction is they're all gone. Endangered means they're very, very close to going extinct. Okay. Now a couple examples of what we have done in the past. Here's a picture of the buffalo trains that used to exist here in the United States. Before we started to move west to settle out in this direction, out into the frontier, there used to be anywhere, it was estimated between 30 to 40 million buffalo. Okay, in fact, Lewis and Clark, here's a quote here, it says, "The moving multitude darkened the whole plains." So it used to be, as far as I can see, when the herds were moving across the plains, you look out and all you would see is buffalo, the brown of their hide just kind of going past, a sea of brown because there were so many buffalo. But what happened was they believed that we basically couldn't hurt these guys. So there was actual trains that used to pull up out in the plains. The trains would stop. Men would get their guns and shoot as many buffalo as they could, and then the train would just take off. So these buffalo trains, it was just for sport. They saw how many they could kill, and they didn't even get out and get the buffalo for food or for their hide or anything. Sometimes they did, but most of the time it was just for sport, just to see how many they could kill. Okay. Here's an example from Australia. This is the Australian tiger. It went extinct back in the 1930s because the settlers there basically hunted it to extinction. They kept killing them, and eventually all of them are gone. So you can't even see the Australian tiger anymore. That takes us to a tiger that you're familiar with. It's estimated that between 20 to 40 years that tigers are probably going to be extinct. If we keep on going with the way we're doing. Basically, a lot of people hunt these guys to get their claws, their teeth, grind their bones because they believe that they have supernatural powers for healing and stuff like that. So even though they're supposed to be protected under certain laws, there's lots of people that go out there and still hunt them and kill them because they believe that's going to heal them and stuff like that. So in 20 to 40 years, tigers may or may not be gone, depending on what we do to step in. So that means, if you think about it, that means your grandchildren probably will not ever see a real life tiger. They might see pictures of tigers and believe that, oh, did they really exist? One of those things. So it's kind of scary to think that. But we don't just do it with these, kind of large animals. We've done it with plants, and we've done it with other small animals and insects as well. So that's threat number one. Threat number two is introducing pollutants into food webs. Human beings have always believed that our planet is so huge that no matter what we could do, the planet could take it, it's going to heal itself, things are going to renew. But we're learning the very, very hard way that that's not the case. One example I could tell you about is something I learned when I was in New York. My very first year of college, I went out to New York, and the university I worked at, there were several people that worked at the labs out there in Long Island. And they worked out there in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and they used to work with radioactive materials. And what they would do is when they were done testing something, instead of putting it into a container that says radioactive or something like that, they would just pour it down the sink. And it would go down the sink, and where do those things run? Out into rivers, stuff, and things like this that we see here. So a lot of the water and stuff became contaminated with this radioactive stuff. So Long Island has some of the highest cancer rates in the United States for humans, plants, and animals. So it's kind of old thinking to believe that we could do whatever we want, we could dump whatever we want, even to the oceans. I mean, oceans are massive, and people, even to this day, still believe that, it doesn't matter what we put in there, it's going to be fine. That's not the case. So polluting always is going to come back and bite us in the rear in the end. So it's definitely something that we need to stop doing as well. All right, the last threat to biodiversity is introducing foreign species. So as humans have moved throughout the globe, they often either purposely or accidentally take animals or plants with them. And when they get to a new area, they bring those animals and plants to that area. And it doesn't seem like it would be a bad thing. But the problem is that new plant or animal in the area usually doesn't have a predator to hunt it or an herbivore that wants to eat it. So what happens is it starts to grow out of control or reproduce out of control. And what that does is when you have a plant growing out of control or animals reproducing out of control, they start to take all the resources, the food, the water, the space from organisms that already lived in that area. And that can devastate an entire area. In fact, it can even cause a species to go extinct. So this is something we didn't realize for the longest time, that taking species from one area of the world and putting it to another can have really, really devastating effects on that new area. So one example is the Galapagos tortoise. The Galapagos tortoise are on the islands where Darwin formulated his theory of evolution. And these huge tortoises here, there were probably hundreds and hundreds of tortoises that lived on the islands. But as people started to arrive to the islands, they brought rats on the ships, and the rats got off and started to have to make homes on the islands. And basically what they did was they found the tortoise eggs, and they were using the tortoise eggs as food. Now these rats didn't have any natural predators there, and since they didn't have natural predators, there wasn't a lot of competition for food either. So these guys, the rats, basically started growing out of control and eating the tortoise eggs and devastated the tortoise population. Now there's very, very few tortoises actually left on the Galapagos Islands, mostly in large part due to the rats that we brought in. Okay, so those are the 3 threats to biodiversity. Oh, one more thing. Introducing foreign species with this threat. Something locally here in California. One thing that we're having a problem with is zebra mussels. Zebra mussels are like clams, very similar to clams. And these zebra mussels are basically getting into our rivers, lakes, and streams. And again, they don't have anything to keep them under control, things that are going to eat them and stuff like that. So they just start reproducing out of control. And basically they take nutrients and stuff out of the water, which cause the other organisms that live in the lake, river, or stream to start dying off. So it's a huge, huge problem. So if you ever go boating or anything like that, ride jet skis, whenever you pull into a park or something, a state park or a county park or whatever, if you're going to launch your boat or your jet ski into the water, they usually check it to make sure it doesn't have zebra mussels, because they're spreading so rapidly in all of our waterways throughout Southern California here. Alright, so those now are 3 threats to biodiversity. So that's the end of video number 3.